Hello and welcome to Mississippi Insight. I'm Byron Brown. Thank you for joining us as we continue our candidate interview series ahead of the 2023 election.
If you're just out here telling people, hey, we're going to cut the grocery tax and we're going to cut the income tax, again, where's that revenue going to come from?
This week, we introduce you to Tiffany Longino. The Brandon Republican is one of the primary challengers looking to unseat Delbert Hosemann. We'll get her views on economic policy and taxes, healthcare, education, and more. Also, state Democrats toss out their party chairman after a public display of infighting with fellow executive. Tyree Irving is out. Chet Taylor is in. You're watching Mississippi Insight. We have less than a month before Mississippi's primary elections on August 8th, and the most interesting action that night may well come from the race for a lieutenant governor. Republican incumbent Delbert Hosemann faces two primary challengers, Tiffany Longino and Chris McDaniel. We heard from the LG last week. We'll bring you our interview with Senator McDaniel next Sunday. But this morning, it's time to hear from Longino. She describes herself as a devoted Christian and a conservative, a wife and mother living in Brandon, and a committed educator. Our senior political correspondent, Richard Lake, met with Longino in Mendenhall, where she grew up, to talk about a range of top issues, including the economy.
I got my bachelor's. I'll tell you a little bit about me. I got my bachelor's of arts in English and master of arts in English from Jackson State University. I'm a PhD candidate at Mississippi State University, and I am tired of people making decisions for the working middle class, and they don't come and ask us questions and get engaged to our really needs. They're looking at it from their perspective. And so I'm going to bring the people and the public back into public policy. I'm qualified because, number one, of my ability to be transparent, my integrity, my character, doing my research, my education, being able to relate to people, being able to make fair and equal and equitable decisions. I'm also able to put my personal decisions, aside, and a lot of our legislators haven't been able to do that. My economic priorities, so what we have in Mississippi is called gross domestic product. Rephrase, acronyms of that is GDP. So we bring in roughly about $23 million, if not more, Richard, of agriculture. So that's our first highest revenue in the state of Mississippi. Then second, we have educational services, and that's like 22% of 100%. And then the third one is mining. So my plan for the economy kind of falls aligned with education. I want to create a dual curriculum system for education that will create a pathway for agriculture. So for example, I want institutions, two-year colleges to create pathways with high schools and create more educational opportunities that will give students the opportunities to go into agriculture. Since we know that's our highest paid revenue, then we need to give that pitch more to students. And that way, that would keep our students and our young adults in the state of Mississippi, because as you know, a lot of our students, a lot of our young adults, they leave because we don't have the pay and we don't have incentives. So since we have the highest income coming in from agriculture, we need to act on that and keep that sustaining. Actually, and Andy Gibson is actually doing a great job with agriculture. So one of my pitches for the economy is that. Another pitch is for healthcare as well. And I'm sure we'll talk about healthcare. Actually, with the job market's concerned, we have had an increase in employment. Actually, we have 3.5% over actually the U.S. unemployment rate, and that hasn't been like that since 1998. So with the job market, my plan is to bring in more jobs. And another pitch for the economy is, instead of rising taxes for Mississippians, I want to look at corporations, and I want to look at your Nissans that are here, Amazon in here, and increase the percentage that we receive from them for our revenue instead of raising taxes. And here's the thing. I'm okay with Roe versus Wade, right? I'm okay with taking something. I'm not okay with personal choices of why you decided to, take Medicaid away. if you take something again, you have to give something. Like my father-in-law say, Ronald Reagan said, everyone has to get something. So if my rights need to be protected, fine, because I'm pro-life, right? But you got to give me something. You can't say, hey, we're going to take rights away from women when they have children, and we're only going to give you this to a certain amount of time. No. We're going to give you this as a supplement to help you, not to abuse or take advantage of. But absolutely, I'm for, and 70% of Republicans, might I add, for the expansion of Medicaid, and 95% of Democrats, they're for it as well. So if you're constantly taking, then we need to have a give and take relationship. We need to give. We're an unhealthy state. I gave you some numbers for, people who have diagnosed with illness, obesity state. It's like we're something negative in the national rankings. Hey, 1 in 4 people cannot afford their prescription. So you can't be, Richard, oblivious to the fact. If we have an issue, we have a plague here. You need to come off that high horse and approve this expansion. So I'm for it.
What other healthcare priorities do you have other than expansion, or does it all kind of stem from there for you?
What I want to put back into school. So when I was a young girl, not too long ago, we had home ed in school. We talked, and I know some parents may, kind of get all up in arms about it. But again, in rankings, I look at data. I don't go by word of mouth. I want to put health priorities back in school as far as STDs. As you know, we're ranked in the top 10 for HIV, for STDs, because we have taken that out of school and we're not educating our students. We're not making them aware of, hey, and I understand that parents, well, I want to teach my children. We get that, but we need different perspectives. Again, I'm about prevention. Of course, Richard, we would never eliminate everything, but let's bring it back to the school, because again, we want to produce, awareness among our students. And that's our responsibility as legislation as well, to protect them as well. Because you have some students that do not get this because they do not know. That's one of my pitches for healthcare, is to also make it mandatory, implement some programs to put in school as well. I also want to implement mental health. Working at the institution that I work at, we're just now getting mental health, therapists. We need to have them in every school because it's real and it's not going anywhere.
As you know, Mississippi ranked 51st in healthcare. That's according to the Commonwealth Fund's latest state surveys. What all needs to be done to climb up those ranks?
First, accept the expansion of Medicaid. Number 2, we need transparency. We need transparency in healthcare bills. So if I walk into a clinic, I want to see how much I'm going to pay. So my husband and I, we had a car accident, right? And so we got some bills. And I found out that there are 2 separate bills. One separate bill for the physician, and then another bill for the actual visit. And I'm like, what, really? So we need some transparency, in the bills. Another practice that needs to happen with hospitals and then rural clinics, we need to keep our rural clinics. My father-in-law, he's a vet. And so with the vets, they have the choice program, I believe, you can't just completely cancel out the choice program, which I do agree that the vets, keep your VA. I do believe that the vets should be able to have the same free and accessible and equitable insurance. But for the choice insurance, if I stand correct, it's private, right? But it wouldn't be private, or we wouldn't have to give them that option if they had access to it. We have to stop being oblivious to the fact that we have rural hospitals and that you have some people that have to drive 2 hours away. Because my father-in-law, he has to drive to get to the vet. He lives in Prentice, right? So he has to drive to Jackson, which is 2 hours. But if you have those private practices in those rural areas and give them the resources such as technology, give them the manpower and also the finances, then he would probably just be okay with that. Slowly, I would look into getting rid of the choice practice, but I will not get rid of it if we are not successfully 100% to give our vets, their due diligence of what they deserve. I would like to see more technology in the healthcare as far as, again, rural areas and desolate areas, as far as being able to do telehealth. We just providing them with more resources. And if we can't utilize those health clinics, then let's combine them into our schools. Because what we do know that we have nurses in every school. So we can bring it to that aspect as well.
We'll have more from 12 News' interview with Tiffany Longino when Mississippi Insight continues.
On education, additional priorities, and you mentioned that workforce training, tying in education. What else would you want to prioritize if you like to?
Yeah, for sure. So for the teacher aspect, I plan to implement a performance pay. So if teachers reach their quota for state standardized tests, I want them to have a bonus. Those funds will come from the school districts, the local educational agencies. I want them to allocate funding and reallocate funding of federal funding of what they do not, of their expenditures, of what they have not spent. So again, if you are able to meet your quota with state, assessments, then you should receive a bonus. You should receive an incentive outside of your salary. If you have perfect attendance, I want to give them that as well, because that builds and boosts teacher morale. It gives them a reason. As you know, we're number 43 in education. So also for recidivism as well. And I want to touch on something because, the House, Delbert Hosemann, he speaks highly of, the teacher, pay raise. And that's true, but everyone didn't get that pay raise. College instructors, we didn't get that pay raise. So what you do for one, you have to do for all. So that's one thing on the teacher side. And for the student side, Richard, I want to implement it, as I stated earlier, a dual curriculum. A dual curriculum whereas students have the autonomy to select from a liberal education versus vocational education. So being that, again, agriculture is our #1 revenue in the state, we need to create pathways from 2-year institutions as well as 4-year institutions. I want students to say, hey, I want to either go to a 4-year institution and receive this degree, or I have the flexibility and I'm okay with going to a 2-year to go get a trade, because we need, engineers, we need mechanics. And in the real world, we want everyone to go to college, but that doesn't happen. So we need to be more flexible with the education system. And so I'm kind of with the ideologies of both Booker T. Washington with the talented 10th, and then that was W.E. Du Bois with talented 10th, and then Booker T was with vocational trades. So with those two theorists, I implement both ideologies into my perspective, because I don't think there's one way to skin a cat.
On Mississippi's national ranking, obviously historically ranking very low, but recently we've experienced tremendous gain in specifically reading and math scores.
We have.
What is your analysis of that? How did that happen, and what would you do to make sure that keeps going?
We have. So we increased in reading the 2 years due to COVID. So they had to lessen some of the numbers. And I'm not really sure about math. I didn't see the numbers for math, but you said is out there. So what I would do would keep that going is, we talk about pre-K, and you have some people, pre-kindergarten, you have some people that's not forward. And even then I live in Rankin County, right? So even last year, we have just gotten pre-K in Rankin County, because it was those A school districts and B school districts that was not required to have pre-K, right? And so I'm all about prevention. So I want every county to invest into pre-K, because when you have prevention instead of intervention, right, you lessen some of the deficits that we have. Instead of creating interventions, then you have identified, say, hey, we have these deficits, but you could have prevented that if you had programs. So keeping up with pre-K is one thing, because we know that if a child is not able to read at the third grade level, then likely that child will not be on reading level, and it's a pipeline to other institutions that we don't want to happen. Mississippi is 15%, we're number one in poverty, and we know that education decreases poverty and crime. So I want plans and programs in place. Also with the STEM program, if we have summer enrichments, if we can invest into our summer programs, whether a child has failed or not, give a child an opportunity to go to summer programs. Give a child more than 1 and 2 opportunities to take state assessments. And I also want to include technological tools in there as well to help our students, because we know that students learn at different times, different seasons. You know, boys can probably be faster, girls can be faster. So it's different avenues. So I want some more plans in place. With the reading, with pre-K, make sure that every county, no matter whether it's the A school or B school, that has preventative measures instead of just intervention measures.
What is your stance on the elimination of state income tax and the grocery tax?
If we accept Mississippi for the expansion of Medicaid, I'm for it. But I'm not for cutting taxes if we're not going to accept the expansion of Medicaid, only because that revenue will have to come from somewhere. Because if you're just out here telling people, hey, we're gonna cut the grocery tax and we're gonna cut the income tax, again, where's that revenue going to come from? Are you going to discreetly raise taxes? I don't want people to be misled about misleading information. So my plan is to go back, reevaluate, reassess the expansion of Medicaid, because as you know, we're number one as the unhealthy state. 43% of Mississippians have high blood pressure, right? 14% of Mississippians, have been diagnosed with diabetes. So I have to see something tangible, Richard, to show where this revenue is going to come from. Because if you take, you have to give something. So if we can produce data, I'm not interested in people just saying what they're going to do, because I know, which a lot of Mississippians may not, I'm not sure. So to protect Mississippians, I want to be able to show them, hey, if we cut these taxes, this is what we're going to supplement. Because just saying something, we know people can say a lot of things. I want tangible, I want evidence to say, hey, this is what we're going to supplement. So we supplement, and I'm able to show the people, I'm fine with the income tax, I'm fine with the grocery tax cut.
That's Tiffany Longino, Republican candidate for Lieutenant Governor, speaking with 12 News' Richard Lake. As we mentioned earlier, we'll bring you our interview with Delbert Hosemann's other primary challenger, State Senator Chris McDaniel, next Sunday, July 16th. And on the 23rd, we'll broadcast our one-on-one with Governor Tate Reeves as he seeks a second term of office. Our candidate interviews with Lieutenant Governor Hosemann and Democratic candidate for Governor Brandon Presley are already online. You can find those online at WJTV.com. We'll be back in a moment. Leaders of the Mississippi Democratic Party have a new chairman after a rowdy leadership meeting last week. The Dems' 80-member executive committee voted to remove Chairman Tyree Irving. The former judge had announced his resignation at the top of the week, facing pressure amid a nasty feud with other party leaders. Some Democrats worried that the infighting would jeopardize a $250,000 contribution from the National Democratic Party. But Thursday evening, Irving told the committee that he was rescinding his resignation. 46 members voted for his removal anyway. According to MississippiToday.org, when asked to vote on the motion for his own removal, Irving replied, quote, "This meeting is illegal and I won't vote in an illegal meeting," end quote. He later clarified that he wanted to be recorded as voting no. The committee voted to replace Irving as chairman with State Representative Sheck Taylor of Starkville. He told members, quote, "Let's always be sure we keep the party above individuality. If we can do that, we can go into the elections with our heads held high and spread resources around to support all our candidates," end quote. All this unfolds amid a state election year when all 8 statewide offices and legislative seats are up for grabs. We're back in a moment. If you have comments or questions about today's show or suggestion for an interview segment, just drop us a line. Email our producers. The address is news@WJTV.com. We want to thank Lieutenant Governor candidate Tiffany Longino for joining us this week. We're back next weekend with more of our political and current affairs coverage that you demand. I'm Byron Brown from all of us here at 12 News. Make it a great weekend.